It is setup day for my market, and as you can tell, the car is packed to the rim. Yeah, we have got everything loaded up. I'm ready to head out and start my setup. See you there. Hey everybody, it's Cindy here from Hooked on Crafts, and I wanted to pop in today to give you a little bit of a market review. A little over a week ago, I had my last market, and typically this market does very well for me. It is very well attended. It has a lot of vendors. It's been going on for probably over, I think it's their 35th or 36th annual bazaar. So it's happened for many, many years. This year was a little different. If any of you guys watch Stacy at Stacy Makes, you will know that she was also in my area, Springfield, Illinois, and she had a show, one of her best shows, on this same weekend that my show was on. So I have a few feelings about that. One, typically the Hobnob craft show happens the week before the craft show that I usually do. And for some reason this year they fell on the same weekend, and I'm not sure why that happened or if that was planned. I'm not sure why that happened. So when we'll just start from the beginning. So I got to set up on Friday night. Um, you saw the clip of me with all my stuff packed up in the car. I get to my venue, and there's only about 3 of us down in the basement. Typically, I have a spot down in the basement. They have 2 spots for vendors. They have the main floor and the basement. And typically, if you have not done this show forever and ever, there are no spots left up on the main floor. So typically, I always ask for a spot in the basement. It's not as crowded. It's a little more laid back. So I just usually get a spot in the basement. The basement will hold probably 15 to 20 vendors. There were only 3 of us in the basement this year. We kind of rely on each other to drive some of that traffic down to the basement, because a lot of people, if somebody says, oh, there's hardly anybody down there, or they look down there and don't see hardly anybody down there, they won't go downstairs. So that had me a little concerned. As many of you might have caught in a couple videos ago, I have purchased myself, and you can kind of see it a little bit here behind me, a 3D printer. I just purchased the Bamboo A1 Mini. It's a small 3D printer, and I had been printing things. And when I got down there and saw that there weren't hardly any vendors and there was tons of wide open spaces, I asked the event coordinator if she minded if I brought a few of my 3D printed items to sell. I asked first if there were any other vendors that were selling that type of stuff. And she said that no, there weren't any other vendors, and she didn't mind if I went ahead and set up some. So I am very grateful that she allowed me to do that. I think that helped us out a lot. So I think that allowed us to do very well. So yeah, I'm going to insert some clips right here of my setup. Now, as I'm panning around, try to look down the, I think it's a cafeteria usually. So look down the cafeteria area, and you can see it's wide open spaces and no other vendors. So that's kind of what we were dealing with. So we were allowed to go. The event started at 9, and we were allowed in the building at 8. Sorry, my kitty wants some love. At 8. So Haley, my daughter, and I, we got up early and took my 3D printed stuff. I actually had a black sheet that I used to use many, many years ago to before I got my tablecloths to set on the tables, and there was a table down there by um, my booth space, anyways. So we pulled that table to the front, set out the black sheet, and put out priced and signed my 3D printed stuff that morning. Now, I will tell you, this event typically has a lot of kids running around. I mean, it is a school after all, and it's put on by the PTO. So typically there are a lot of little ones running around. I say they're little. They were third, fourth graders. They were, they were bigger, because this school goes all the way up to the 8th grade. So kindergarten, maybe pre-K to 8th grade. So you get a lot of kids running around at this show. And they were swarming Haley and I as we were putting out the 3D printed stuff. Now, granted, I did not have any of this price. I did not have any signing. I barely had displays, things that I could use for this. So I am literally just winging it at this point. I'm going to insert a picture here of the table and what it looked like after I got it set up. I'm sorry I didn't do a video of it. Quite frankly, the kids were running around and we were scrambling to get everything set up. So I didn't have time to get very much video of this whole day, honestly. So here's the picture. As you can see, it's very hodgepodge. It's very, I probably had about $1,000. I'm thinking about $1,000 worth of merchandise in 3D printed stuff, and probably about $3,600 in crocheted stuff. And um, my crocheted stuff, I have the table full, but I also tried not to overfill my table this time, and I put there's merchandise down below in bags for me to restock if needed. So here I'm going to insert a clip now of what my setup looks like at the beginning of the show. Spike, please sit down. Okay, so once it was open and once we were ready to go, the kids loved all of the 3D printed stuff and a lot of the adults. I went with one little shoebox tote and another tote that was probably about so high and maybe filled halfway full. So it wasn't a lot of stuff. All of my 3D stuff you saw on my table, that was everything that I had. But it was a super hit. They loved the dragons, they loved the eggs, they loved the little fidget toys, the clickers, everything. So the 3D stuff was a huge hit, and I came home with very, very little of that. Some minis, a few eyeball animals, and that was it. So just know that the totals that I'm going to give you today have all of that included because I was not organized, I was not prepared, and I did not separate any of that out. So, day one, I will say the big items I sold were Snorlax. I had 2 of those, and I sold both of them on the very first day. I finally sold a snuggler. I have had 2 snugglers since my very first show last year. And they were dragon snugglers. They were so cute. And I finally sold one at this show. Other hits were loaf cats. I probably had 25 to 30 loaf cats, and I sold all of them. I came home Saturday night. I made 3 more, put those out when I got in Sunday morning, and all of those sold. I made one while I was at the show because Sunday was really slow. Um, and as soon as I put it on the table, it sold. So loaf cats were a huge hit. I am busy currently restocking some of those for my next show, which is December 1st. And I'll talk a little bit about that later too. Um, so loaf cats were a big hit. Small snakes were a big hit. I sell those for $10. I probably had about 6 or 7. And I think I came home with 1 or 2, so I'm restocking those. The little wiener dogs that I made. I did not sell hardly any of my Grinches. I only sold 1 or 2 baby Grinches, and I had really tried to make at least 10 of those because it was a Christmas market. I figured those would sell really well. I finally sold one of my big squids, the Plushie Co. and Company Plushie Co. Squid, and I've had it since last year at my first show. So those did really well. I did not sell hardly any keychains this time, and I'm thinking, or my little pocket pals, and I'm thinking it's because they were $5 items, and kids that only had $5 to spend or $10 to spend were spending that $5 or $10 on some of my smaller 3D printed things like fidget toys, clickers, just little animals that I had printed out. So they were attracted to those things, and they were new, and they wanted those. So I did not sell hardly any of my smaller $5 items. So I have plenty of those left over for my next show. Um, Pigs were not a very big hit again. Elephants were not a very big hit again. Lots of booty frogs, all of my booty turtles, all of my sea turtles almost. I probably have a couple sea turtles left. I did fairly well with bees, um, which I really haven't made any bees for a while because I thought they were kind of slowing down. I probably will still make a few bees. I will not be making any more octopi or whales. I just only sold 1 or 2, and I probably have about 10 of each made. So I don't know if I'm going to be carrying those things forward. I think people have seen them now a lot, and they're just not fresh. They're kind of stale, and I want to try a few new things for next year. So, all of that being said, I will say Saturday I made approximately $1,600. Now, I was not keeping track. Honestly, when people started coming down, Haley was manning my crochet table and I was manning the 3D print table, and we were both kind of crazy. $1,600 is a lot for me for one show in one day. The show ran from 9 to 4 that day, so it was a full day. And last year I did only about, I want to say it was like $1,400 on the first day. So I was $200 ahead. I thought, oh, this is going to be a great show. Last year I made $1,800. My goal was really to do $2,000 this year. But once I got there and saw how sparse the vendors were down in my area, I was concerned. I was concerned I wasn't even um, going to do half of what I did last year. I think the vendor situation, I think a lot of those vendors realized that Hobnob was also the same weekend, and they backed out and went to that show instead because it is a huge show. It's very well attended. I don't remember how many thousands of folks they said they moved through there, but I did see several pictures on social media, and they were shoulder to shoulder and packed. It was a very packed show. And Stacy did really well. Other vendors that I know do very well at that show. So I think some of the vendors that we would have normally seen downstairs, because they're typically on different weekends, also paid for the booth and then realized that Hobnob was the same weekend and just cut their losses and went to Hobnob. So I'm not sure how the vendors upstairs did, honestly. I don't feel like there was near as much traffic at this show, but I had a couple little boys down at my booth, and they were my best customers and also my best salesmen. They were running around upstairs. One of them had one of the dragons that I made draped around his shoulder. He's telling his friends, he's bringing other kids down. So, really and truly, I believe his name was Andrew, was my best customer and my best salesman. So, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate everything you did for me. So about $1,600 on Saturday. Sunday comes. Sundays are typically slow. We got there at 10. It's a 10 to 2 on Sunday. A lot of times it doesn't get busy till about 11:30 because folks go to church and then they filter down to the craft show. And that was the case this time too. I don't feel like we got a lot of the church crowd this year either. So yeah, I just don't know how I feel about both of them being on the same weekend. I don't know if I need to reevaluate how I do things or what I want to do next year. I'm just not sure yet on how that's going to play out. So I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch and see uh, to when the dates kind of fall this year to see if they're separate or if they're on the same date. I don't know. I'm not sure how I want to do that. I do really like doing the little flower craft show that I go to. Um, all of the proceeds go to the PTO and the kids, and I love that. Whereas Hobnob is a business that puts on craft shows, and that's how they make their money. So yes, it's a very different crowd, it's very different folks, but I really do enjoy the little flower craft show. So I don't know what I want to do. Um, Sunday came, it was very slow, um, but I did have some sales. I had some really decent sales. I ended up doing about $350. So I did like $1,950. My fee for this show was $80. So I basically cleared like $1,880. So to me, that is still a very successful show. I do like the laid backness of it. I did kind of feel a little bit guilty because when I brought my 3D stuff in, I really took up 2 booth space. I only paid for one. Um, However, there were not any other vendors down there. So they were asking for some silent auction donations for the next weekend when they had another event. And I did put together a really nice basket for them with probably about $100 worth of merchandise. So I felt like that was my way of giving back and thanking them for letting me use that second booth space, really. So that is really how my show went. I'm sorry it took me so long to get this video out. I kind of had to sit with it a while because I still don't know how I feel. I think it's kind of bad that the Hobnob folks put on their show the very same weekend that this other very well established craft show happens. So I don't know. I don't know if that's just the way that Thanksgiving fell this year and it threw everybody off, or maybe the venue at the fairgrounds was booked on the other dates. I'm not sure why they happened on the same weekend this year. But all that being said, I feel like I had a great show. I feel like it was very successful. I did feel a little bit bad for some of the other vendors there because I don't think there was the traffic that they needed to have a really successful show with some of the items that they had brought. So That's all I have. I am busy making loaf cats. I'm busy making a couple more Snorlaxes, a couple more snakes, some booty turtles. Hopefully, I will get all of that done. Now, my next show is December 1st. Poor planning on my part. I did not look at the calendar. I did not realize that December 1st fell the same weekend as Black Friday and all of that. So I don't know how this last show is going to do. I don't know if people will be tired of shopping in the stores and come out to the craft show. I don't know if they will have already spent all their money for the weekend. I don't know. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope this is a great show. I've never done this show before. It does happen also out at the fairgrounds in the Orr building. It's a different venue hall than what I did in September. And it's the one I did in September and the one that the Hobnob Craft Show was done in was the same building. So that is a huge building. You can get a lot of vendors in there. The Orr building is not quite as big, and like I said, I've never done this show before, but hopefully it all turns out well. I think I have enough stuff made up, and I hope I have a great weekend. So until next time, guys, happy crocheting.